Hi, this is Amy Raye
Casey Nunnery,
and Sheila Mejia, and this is Creating Communication-Rich Environments in Self-Contained Classrooms. What is augmentative and alternative communication? Augmentative and alternative communication is any form of communication that is used to convey messages, thoughts, and feelings without speaking. Unaided systems include gestures, facial expressions, and sign language. Aided systems involve some kind of symbol and must convey a message. Examples: low-tech versus high-tech. Examples of populations associated with using AAC include individuals with developmental disabilities, individuals with ALS, individuals with cerebral palsy, and individuals with stroke.
For the remainder of this presentation, we will be using the acronym AAC to stand for Augmentative and Alternative Communication. So who works with AAC users? Team member examples include general education teachers, special education teachers, speech-language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, AAC specialists, vocational counselors, family members, and other caregivers. AAC team members should be adequately equipped to model and instruct on the use of the individual's AAC device. The amount of training needed for each team member will vary, though each member should have enough training to avoid hindering an individual's communication.
So why is AAC training important? Teachers have often reported feeling insecure in their skills and training in implementing AAC in their classroom. Consistency in the use of AAC during everyday situations can aid in the learning and literacy of a student. Everyday use of AAC develops a routine and works towards increasing the communication outcomes in children. This training and instruction should prioritize not only how to use and program AAC devices, but also how to create an environment in which a student will have many opportunities to learn how to use his or her device.
Study number 1 is titled AAC and Australian Speech Pathologists Report on a National Survey. The purpose of this study was to retrieve information on the current practices in AAC, access to AAC resources, perspective of their own knowledge of AAC, and their desire for further education. The survey was 20 items with questions about current area of practice, level of knowledge of AAC, interest in further education, educational background, and geographic location. The participants included in this survey were all registered members of the Speech Pathology Australia. There were 1,600 total surveys mailed out and 971 respondents. The three main strengths for this study were the sample size, the response rate, and the size of the survey. The sample size was rather large, with 971 responses received. Of the 1,600 surveys that were sent out, a large response rate of 61% were filled out and returned. The survey that was sent out was rather short and should have only taken about 15 minutes to complete, which avoids survey fatigue. The primary limitation of this study was the weak external validity. There was a lack of generalizability because the study was performed in Australia with speech-language pathologists. SLPs in Australia only need a bachelor's degree to practice, where in the United States a master's degree is required. Also, the study was limited to only SLPs and no other AAC team members. The majority of respondents indicated access to at least some form of AAC resources. 29% did not indicate awareness of any resources. Almost all respondents, 98%, identified awareness of unaided AAC systems. However, 7% did not indicate knowledge of low-tech devices, and 15% did not indicate knowledge of high-tech devices. 29% of respondents said that they have recommended an AAC device that they had never seen or used before. The results of this study indicate a gap in awareness of AAC resource access and knowledge of aided AAC devices. Many AAC users are using aided systems, whether they are high or low tech. Knowledge of the devices you are working with and recommended to clients is crucial. Types of AAC devices will differ based on many factors, including socioeconomic status, device availability, geographic location, etc. A general knowledge base of AAC is needed in order to ensure, at the very least, a previous knowledge of both aided and unaided systems. This article was chosen due to the wealth of information given in regards to the types of information that should be included on a survey about AAC training. The survey in this study was administered to speech-language pathologists, but the information asked can easily be modified to fit the specifics of self-contained classroom teachers.
Our second study was titled Teachers Make It Happen, From Professional Development to Integration of Augmentative and Alternative Communication Technologies in the Classroom. The purpose of this study was to test the outcomes of teacher professional development and teacher support on the frequency of speech-generated device use for students with severe disabilities. From this point forward, I will be referring to speech-generated device as SGD. Teachers were trained in 3 phases. During the first phase, there was an in-service given to teachers describing device operation. During the second phase, there was technical assistance in the classroom with creating opportunities for instruction and SGD use, as well as embedding a device use into classroom activities. The third phase included teachers providing technical assistance and communication instruction, and they were taught to use milieu teaching strategies. All of these levels of training were given to participants and then used to measure the effects of support components on the frequency of SGD use, specifically initiation and response. The student target behaviors were described as device initiations and device responses. The device initiations were defined as student pressing the SGD with 1 or more fingers and activating an audible message. The device response was defined as responding to a question or comment without being prompted to do so within the previous 10 seconds. This study found that teacher instruction during Phase 1 was not directly effective in increasing student initiation and response while using SGD. However, Phase 2, during which support and training in embedding device use into classroom activities, did have an effect on student performance. For students with extremely severe disabilities, it is most effective for teachers to not only create opportunities for communication in the classroom, but also to implement the use of systematic communication instruction as well, which is given during Phase 3. Several strengths were found for this study. Data measurement of student performance, including the device initiation and device responses, was clearly and specifically outlined. And this showed the effectiveness of the training based on actual students' data rather than a self-report of competency provided by the teachers. The variety in the sample of teachers was also a strength. They selected many different ages and levels of experience. Treatment procedures used by the professionals in the study were specific and would be able to be replicated. The data was selected following each phase of training, and this data was compared to show which level of training was optimal for student progress with their AAC devices. And finally, the behavioral measurements were appropriate and specific, accurately measuring the dependent variable, which was students' initiations and responses, in relation to the independent variable, which was each phase of training given to the participating teachers. Weaknesses found in this study included small sample size, with only 4 teachers and 4 students selected to participate in the study. Also, among the students, the definition of speech impairment was not clearly defined. They were described as having limited, unintelligible, or no speech, without specifications for the labeling of each category. The study also failed to include what the participating teachers' credentials were. And finally, they did not have strong external validity because it did not include other factors that could have potentially impacted the students' performance, such as motivation, attitude, level of impairment, practice at home, etc.
The results of this study imply that training alone is not as effective as training and environmental support given on how to incorporate opportunities for SGD use in classroom activities. This supports our goal of creating instruction and training materials specific to embedding these communication opportunities into classroom activities. And without this follow-up support, teachers are likely to neglect the implementation of the skills they've learned.
Our third study was titled AAC Technology Learning Part 3, Regular AAC Team Members. This study examined the goal achievement tendencies, technology learning mode preferences, computer technology interests, and self-efficacy of several AAC team members. The primary purpose of the study was to examine each of these variables and identify how they correlate with one another. There were 32 participants, 8 SLPs, 4 physical therapists, 8 occupational therapists, 8 special educators, and 8 AAC specialists. 4 questionnaires administered relating to the variables mentioned above. The researchers found that mastery goal achievement orientation represented the majority of responses for goal achievement tendencies. Self-efficacy positively correlated with both social achievement orientation and mastery achievement orientation, while computer technology positively correlated with all 3 of the goal achievement orientations. There were no positive correlations found for direct instruction. Subject selection is the primary strength of this study. Special educators are included in the sample size in addition to other AAC team members. As our research will focus primarily on special education teachers, this study was an insightful reference into the thoughts and attitudes of special education teachers. The primary limitation of this study was the small sample size and the individuals who were included in the small sample size. For instance, family members, current AAC users, caregivers, and general education teachers were not included in this study's data set. Additionally, there could be a weakness in the internal validity of this study due to the unknown specific contents of the questionnaire. This article was chosen because it provides insight into the thoughts and preferences of the AAC team members. Although we will only focus on special education teachers, it is important to take into consideration the teachers' ideas to make our tutorial a valuable tool for them to use in the future.
A common trend we found in our research included inadequate training in AAC use reported by SLPs and general education teachers. We hope to expand this research by specifically targeting self-contained classroom teachers in our study. Therefore, our 3 purposes for this study are to evaluate the amount of AAC training that self-contained classroom teachers receive, to identify areas in which additional training would benefit self-contained classroom teachers, and to create a simple training module designed to increase self-contained classroom teachers' knowledge of AAC.
The way we plan to successfully address our 3 primary purposes is to create and administer a short survey to the self-contained classroom teachers. The survey will consist of quantitative items, rating scales, and qualitative items that allow for additional comments at the end of the survey. The survey will be administered to all of the self-contained classroom teachers in Guilford County. Once the surveys are completed and returned, we will analyze the data and create a training module that represents the data collected. This training module will then possibly be included in a larger training program for self-contained classroom teachers. Possible areas of focus included in our training module are defining AAC, core vocabulary, teaching how to model language and communication, incorporating communication in the classroom, how to recognize communication attempts, creating adapted books or communication boards to enhance activities, and many other areas of AAC. In addition to the module, we will also create training videos that include explicit instructions on how to use both low-tech and high-tech AAC devices.
Thank you for watching!